are an 80s based podcast, but we do veer off into the 70s and the 90s occasionally. We are in Los
Mm.
Angeles. I grew up in Northridge. And
Oh, okay.
so yeah, so we, we were here when Mark and Brian arrived in LA, and we were listeners. So we are
It
in.
was a wonderful time, to be honest. When we arrived in LA, the big act in town as far as morning radio was Rick Dees. And at that time, Rick had been on the air for about 8 years. And the entertainment business is unlike many. But in the entertainment business, you can be hot for a while, and then people's just like anything, people have heard it and they're ready for something different. And, Rick was the greatest setup punchline guy I ever heard as far as morning entertainment. He had the best writers, the best voice actors, the best. And then Mark and Brian, by no design of our own, we were completely different. We didn't do setup and punchline. We did a scenario that was funny, and it didn't have jokes, but yet it was entertaining, and people were really attracted to that because it was something they had never heard, including us. We were just doing what we thought might be fun. It wasn't a big scheme. It was just different by virtue of it came out of us for the first time.
Yeah, I do remember. I mean, actually, when you first came on the air in '87. Was it some? I was in New York, and I had heard, but then I finished up school at Cal State Northridge, and then I started hearing my friends talk about Mark and Brian, and it was. I remember actually like tuning in and these set pieces. It was actually like a riddle you would tell, but you called it masterpiece theater, and
Oh, sure.
I remember that distinctly. I remember just like sitting in the parking lot waiting for the punch. You would crack up during the whole thing, and that was part of the fun. I think And you mentioned you hated your laugh, but I loved the whole. You stretched out this what should have been a 15-second joke into
Right.
a 15-minute bit, and that was part of the
Yes.
joy of Mark and Brian.
I can tell you where that came from. My first morning show was at WSGA in Savannah, Georgia. Beautiful town, shitty radio station. In fact, this was the very beginning of the 80s. WSGA was an AM, and music-based AM stations were dying or dead at that point. And this was my first morning show, and it was where I wanted to be. I wanted to be doing mornings, but I had to get used to taking a nap. And I had never, as an infant, I napped, but as an adult, it felt strange, odd, and weird to climb in bed at 2 p.m. to go to sleep. And I just couldn't get sleepy because it wasn't a part of my chemistry. And the local PBS station would play Masterpiece Theater on television, which was a 3-hour, drawn out thing of theater, and it took forever. And so I thought they really they could put this in 2 minutes. They just cut out all that crap and got right down to it. They could do that. And so the concept of miniature theater was born, where we would take the piece and just shorten it and give it to you in 2 minutes or 3, which turned into 15. But it was a lot of fun because we played the classical music, and Brian had a wonderful voice for it. And you're right, we would take a joke and then present it in a theatrical way with our noses stuck up in the air.